Hello and welcome to the Beer Jerk Beer of the Week drink along. I'm Luke and this week we're drinking Mordred from Small Gods. You may know that Small Gods is me and my friend Matt, and we brew the sort of beers that other brewers might like to make perhaps but don't make because no one really likes buying these unfashionable brown beers. Beer drinkers across the world really, they're into craft beer, mainly drink hoppy beers and especially hazy beers. So there's lots of really fantastic hazy pale ales and hazy IPAs around the country. So I'm not bothered about brewing them, to be honest. I'm more into brewing other interesting things that I want to drink for that reason that other brewers don't really make them. Well, some do. There's some shining examples, but still the vast majority of beer that's sold in the craft world is hop forward beers. So I'm very lucky that we can make these small batches of beer and share them with you wonderful people in styles such as table beer. So what is a table beer, I hear you ask? There aren't really clear guidelines around what a table beer is. It's sort of, well, it's not been lost in the mists of time. There was never a clear definition to table beer. It was simply a beer brewed in Belgium with low alcohol that was beer designed for the table to pair with food and just be an everyday, all-day drinking beer that all the family would enjoy. And it's connected to Pater's beer, which means father's beer, which is a beer that will be brewed at the monasteries. So just a nourishing, sustaining ale that can be drank all the time. So in England you had similar sort of styles, like I suppose like small beer or mild might be connected in some ways. So our interpretation of table beer is that it's lower in alcohol. It has some interesting body and characters. The malt, we always put wheat in our table beers. And it has some interesting Belgian yeast character. So these are some previous table beers that we have brewed. So at Small Gods, we never brew the same beer twice. We've never re-released anything. We do not have a core range. We've released, I think, 46 different beers so far in the last 2 or 3 years. So we're really cranking them out. But for me and Matt, the whole fun of it is coming up with new recipes and new artwork, new stories. So previous table beers that we've made are Galahad, which was the first one that we made. Then there was Bedivere, a collaboration with Whistling Sisters, which was fantastic. Love those guys. And Gawain. So you may have one of these beautiful Small Gods glasses with the artwork on there from one of our previous table beers. So the difference here with Mordred is that Mordred is a dark table beer. So also these are beers which are named after the Knights of the Round Table. And if you've heard me chatting about these table beers before, I'm going to regale you with the story of when Matt and I decided to make a series of table beers, and we were coming up with all sorts of ideas for how we could name the series. Talking about different kinds of tables, all kinds, and then we remembered the Knights of the Round Table, and we were just shocked and amazed that no brewery had released a series of table beers named after the Knights of the Round Table. But in retrospect, it's kind of obvious why. That most people are geeks like Matt and I, and also not many people make table beers. So as much as they have been around for centuries, it's a real niche and small style that not many people internationally and even in Belgium have made in the last 100 years or so. It really has been all about lagers for a long period in Belgium, and they do some fantastic ones there. But table beers, I suppose for me, it's the Colonel in London, who are a brewery that's an inspiration to a lot of modern brewers, but especially brewers in London and in Britain. So our very simple craft paper artwork on these beers is definitely a respectful nod to the Colonel, who have beautiful brown bottles with simple brown paper labels, and they've never put anything in cans. They bottle the beers, and that's fine. And it's quite cool that these days, when I was in London last year, I went to the bottle shop to pick some up. They're one of the last stalwarts of bottles, maybe the last. So in all the cool beer shops, You'll see all these glorious cans that are also beautiful, and the only things in bottles would be wild ferment beers, really, lambics and things like that. And the only sort of pale ales that you would see in a bottle are the Colonel, who've just stuck with it for so long that that's the point of difference for them, not shifting to cans. And the reason that Mordred has a black label is, well, it's a dark table beer to begin with. And Mordred was one of the evil knights. So he was the illegitimate son of King Arthur. And he rose up against him when Arthur went off to fight a war. He tried to usurp him, and they had a great battle on the Scottish border. And Arthur was mortally wounded in that battle, and that was kind of the end of it for the Round Table and those glorious days of yours. So Mordred killed it, and it's a dark table beer with a lot of complex speciality malts. Probably should have said at the start, this beer for me is much. It's an enjoyable beer, but it's better warmer. So if you have a chance to let your beer warm up, or if you have a few cans on the go, try one cold, but definitely when it's warmed up to sort of like cellar temperature, you definitely get a bit more out of it. For me, when it's cold, it's a little bit, I suppose the coffee characteristics are a little bit jarring for me of the sort of the roasted malt, so I definitely prefer it slightly warmer than straight from the fridge. So for the malt bill, it is mainly the thing that if you're not a brewer yourself that you might not know about dark beers is that still the majority of the malt in them is light coloured beer. So it will be a Pilsner malt or an ale malt, or in this case a Vienna malt. So yeah, the vast majority of it, even in the darkest of imperial stouts, because those roasted malts and those dark speciality malts, they don't convert into sugars so easily as the paler coloured malts. So of course, if you made a beer with 100% dark roasted malt, it wouldn't turn into sugars, which the yeast couldn't eat and turn into booze, basically. So the majority of this is Vienna malt, which is, really Matt's favourite kind of malt to use to keep things a little bit more interesting. So whether we're doing a lager, an IPA, so that is often what we use as a base for our malt bill. And then there's, I mentioned before, wheat, which we use in all of our table beers. That gives you a little bit of body, nice head retention, and helps with that nice bit of Belgian character. There's some oat in there. There's some rye, which gives it a bit of spice character. And various kinds of, as I say, roasted speciality, chocolate malt that give it, nice coffee character, sort of bit of burnt toast, a bit of cacao. There's a lot going on, and it's nice to have all those characters in a beer that is just 3.5%. I definitely, my approach to creating beers is that I like to brew beer styles to the ABV that they were intended. So when you have a Small Gods IPA, it generally is around 8%, because 7%, because that's how I feel IPAs are the best. They've got more mouthfeel to them, more body, the slickness that you get from the alcohol in there, and that really carries the hop character. But these beers, table beers, are absolutely designed to be in the 3% range. So yeah, I probably will never make a session IPA, but yeah, I think this ABV works really nice for table beers. And yeah, nice kind of darker beer at a more sessionable strength. There's not huge hop character, but if you were to ask a Belgian person, they would say it was overwhelmingly hoppy. But for us New Zealanders that are used to having big hops all the time, it's not super hoppy. But it does use Strata, which is quite a unique hop. It's got that's speaking on the sage character, the real sort of like, yeah, slightly unusual herbal character to it. There is some grapefruit in there. I'm just seeing if you got much on the nose. You definitely get a bit of like herbal hop character on the nose, but it is mainly those dark malts that you're sniffing, really, and a bit of interesting Belgian esters. And there's some with Strata, people talk about bubblegum, which some of you may determine that, especially as it warms up a little bit. And again, that sort of works nicely with the sort of phenols and the esters and the Belgian yeast character. as it is a table beer, it is delicious with food. So sticking with Belgian things, so things like moule-frite, mussels, chips with mayonnaise, so that real fattiness would work nicely with. But also beers like this go really nice with really rich food. So sort of like a game meat, if you've got some venison, something like that. Venison pie will go really nicely. Or something that's really savoury, like a sort of mushroom risotto, I think will go really nicely with this. And yeah, something that's really really herby, so maybe like a mushroom pie with lots of sage, I think will go nicely with this. And another interesting fact about this beer is it's actually the result of a party guile mash, which is a thing that brewers used to do a lot in the olden days, which was when you're making a big beer, so like an imperial stout or a barley wine or a Belgian quad. There's so much sugar that comes out of the carbohydrates in the malt that you can actually do a second mash with that same grain because it's not spent. There's still a lot of goodness in there. So we brewed a pretty massive imperial stout, the ton, which you're going to get to try in a couple of weeks. So sorry, a bit of a spoiler there if you haven't had your next subscription box there, but the ton is a beer that we made with 1 ton of malt and is pretty major. And then we did a party guile, so a second mash, and then we just treated this beer, Mordred, completely differently. So different hopping schedule, different yeast. So a really fun way to minimise wastage, really, because as I say, there's still a lot of goodness left in the grain when you do such a big beer as that. And it's I suppose you save a bit of money, but when you're making beer, the cost of the grains is one of the smaller costs anyway. The real cost of the beer is in the packaging materials, the labels, the tin cans. It isn't alcohol duty, which is a massive part of the cost, and sort of everything else. So unfortunately, it's not a massive cost saving, but it is nice to not use those extra grains and to really sort of get your get 2 beers out of 1 run of grain. So party guile is a really fun thing, and if you are a home brewer, a real cool thing that you should look into next time you are brewing a big boozy beer. I'm not drinking this from the can, I'm drinking it from tap because I'm here at the Fridge and Flagon, which is our Auckland warehouse bar. If you haven't been here, pop along sometime. We're open on Fridays and Saturdays, so we generally have the latest small gods beers on tap, as well as loads of other interesting beers from brewers around the country. And you may notice I'm wearing a Beer Joke Run Club t-shirt, which is because we did a run this morning, which was a bit of an unusual bonus Beer Joke Run Club. It's Mental Health Awareness Week, so we decided to do a Wednesday morning run and drink coffee afterwards, which was a bit of an unusual vibe, but a really good way to start the day in the sunshine here in sunny Eden Terrace. If you're into running, or even if you're not into running, come along to our run club. I started it. I definitely still don't like running. It's been going more than 5 years now. But I really like having a beer afterwards with friends, meeting new people, and it's good to get your heart rate up, do a bit of exercise. So Beer Joke Run Club happens every single Monday here at the Fridge and Flagon. We meet at 5:30 p.m. You can leave your stuff here. We go for a 5k run, and then we drink beers afterwards. Anyway, I'm sick of talking, and my voice is hoarse still. I hope you enjoy this beer. I'm really enjoying drinking it, and it's great to be able to share another Small Gods beer with you. Thanks for being part of the Beer Joke journey. Cheers.